Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Red Donkey Projections. I'm Eric, and we have Lucas as always.
Hey everyone, welcome back, Eric.
Thank you. Today is September 8th, 2021, and today we're going to be talking about the 2022 Senate race in Pennsylvania. Specifically, we're going to stay in the Democratic side of things. We're going to talk about the Democratic primary and the two main contestants, John Fetterman and Conor Lamb. We're going to talk about the backgrounds of both, and we're going to be talking about some factors that may influence, who is more popular in the state, and then we're going to give our final prediction.
And with that being said, let's get right into it. I'll start with a very quick background because we've talked about this a lot. But currently, the current senator is Pat Toomey. He's a Republican. He's going to be retiring. This is an open seat and considered to be the most competitive seat in 2022 and probably the most likely to flip of the states that are up. In the Democratic primary, there are two main candidates, John Fetterman and Conor Lamb, which Eric mentioned. John Fetterman, in general, is considered more of a progressive candidate, backing a lot of progressive agenda. Conor Lamb, very famous for his 2018 special election upset, very moderate candidate. I'll start off with the brief background of John Fetterman. He's currently the lieutenant governor before he was the mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania. And the fact that he's the mayor of Pennsylvania, the former lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania, does give him some good name recognition. We've seen that he has been able to pull out statewide primary victories in the past, such as the lieutenant governor election in 2018. I think it was like a 5-way race. It was a very competitive race. But regarding John Fetterman, he is very progressive, but as it mentions here on fracking, he is moderate, which honestly, I think he does need to be kind of moderate on that issue if he wants to do well in Pennsylvania, since it is such a big part of Pennsylvania's economy. He also has a lot of populist appeal with working class voters. Eric and I were talking about this before we recorded, but in his launch video, he had a lot of appeal specifically towards workers. And, getting that blue collar vote back, whereas, a lot of that shifted to Donald Trump during his presidency. And I'll actually pull up right now. He is getting a decent number of endorsements from unions, which could potentially help him in this primary. As it mentions here, marijuana legalization, he's all for it. Medicare for all, ending the filibuster. These are issues that you would see for maybe a generic progressive. And I'll hand it over to Eric now to show that, Conor Lamb is actually very different than that.
Right. So as Lucas said, Conor Lamb is trying to run kind of a different strategy. And, this isn't new. Conor Lamb is known to be like one of the most Republican Democrats in the House. He just recently won in, I believe, the 17th district in Pennsylvania. It was in a pretty narrow race. I think he won in about 3 points or so. So yeah, as I said, he is currently serving in the House of Representatives, but he will probably soon resign once he, continues his campaign in the Senate. He did win in a special election in 2018, which is kind of how he started his political career. Before that, he was assistant U.S. attorney, and he also served in the military. So with his, moderate appeal, Conor Lamb is going to be running on a more moderate base. He doesn't have any really clear views on the filibuster. They're kind of ambiguous. He even voted against Nancy Pelosi's confirmation as Speaker of the House. So he's that type of candidate. And as we'll get into later in the video, there is quite a debate as to what is the better pathway to win Pennsylvania? Is it to either, be more populist and progressive like John Fetterman, or, be more moderate and appeal to independents such as Conor Lamb? So I'll hand it over to Lucas now to talk exactly about those details.
Right. And I'll further add some more things about Conor Lamb. I don't believe he supports marijuana legalization. I think he supports decriminalization of it. Regarding the filibuster, as Eric mentioned, he was a little bit ambiguous. He was saying, oh, maybe we can get rid of it. Maybe we can reform it. He didn't really offer a lot of details on it. I don't think he supports Medicare for all. I think he's supporting more of like a public option type of thing. So obviously he is a lot to the right. In 2018, voted for Joe Kennedy III for Speaker, and then voted for Hakeem Jeffries in 2020. But digging more into Conor Lamb, on the progressive side of, the Democratic Party, a lot of those progressives, they're saying that Conor Lamb underperformed Joe Biden in 2020, which is true. He did underperform him. And they're saying, because of this, he's unelectable. I would disagree with that opinion that he's unelectable because he underperformed. He did lose by 0.4, but a lot of other Pennsylvania Democrats also ran behind Joe Biden by a larger amount, actually a few of them here. And that was because Joe Biden does have a very strong appeal in these Pennsylvania suburban areas, which these House candidates kind of failed to capture. And a lot of these voters decide to down ballot, more towards the Republican side. So I don't think it's really a fair statement to say that he's unelectable in 2020 because of his underperformance. Of course, this is not to say that he's going to be more electable than John Fetterman. Quite frankly, we still have to figure that out because we're actually not too sure ourselves on who's more electable. But in general, Conor Lamb, he does well in this Western Pennsylvania area, which is actually going to rival John Fetterman because he's also from Western Pennsylvania. So that's what makes this primary so interesting. So I'll toss it to Eric, toss it to Eric. It's too late tonight, but toss it to Eric to talk more about, this interesting John Fetterman tweet that he made a couple hours ago.
So very recently, as Lucas said on his Twitter, John Fetterman announced that he had obtained over 300,000 grassroots contributions, as it says in this tweet. And more specifically, a key group of donators that may, tilt the support between Conor Lamb and John Fetterman is the amount of labor unions. It's nothing like extraordinary, but like it's a significant amount of labor unions in Pennsylvania that are supporting John Fetterman. Maybe he's been more open about, workers' rights and, wages and, just working hours. So I think that may, turn on some Pennsylvania independence or like the working class. There's a huge coal industry in Pennsylvania, and just the general working class in Pennsylvania is pretty substantial. So the fact that these labor unions are supporting John Fetterman may be a sign, but also may not be. Donations aren't the biggest indicator in who will win a primary, but it is pretty influential that, this group is donating so much to John Fetterman. And that could be a huge foundation of his base and therefore a huge foundation of Pennsylvania population.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And I think this does help him in the primary if he does do very well in these Western Pennsylvanian areas against Conor Lamb, because they're both from Western Pennsylvania. They're going to be fighting for their home base, and it'll be very interesting to see what ends up happening, and it's also very interesting to see that Conor Lamb is actually he's visiting pretty red places in Pennsylvania, pretty red counties, whereas I think John Fetterman's sticking more towards those bluer areas. I think that's a very interesting campaign strategy. I don't think it's really that effective, but we'll see soon enough in the primary. Finally, I do want to discuss the primary, these polling numbers. I'm going to be quite honest. I am very much taking them with a huge grain of salt. First of all, because polling did pretty bad in 2020 in Pennsylvania. But second of all, these are Fetterman internals, so I don't really know how much I can really trust them. But Data for Progress did do a decent job in the 2021 New York City mayor election. They actually were able to get Maya Wiley as second, which a lot of people did not end up predicting. But according to these polling numbers, they're showing that, John Fetterman's more electable than Sean Parnell, who looks like he's going to be the Republican nominee, then Conor Lamb, who's actually losing. I really doubt that. I don't think that Fetterman's really up by 8 points and Conor Lamb is really losing by 2 points. But according to their polls for the Democratic primary, they have Fetterman up by a very large margin over Conor Lamb in the primary. In the other poll, though, the nonpartisan poll, it does show Fetterman up a decent amount, but there is a very high undecided number. I think that Fetterman will win the nomination, and I think this is going to be based off of his name recognition as a statewide office holder, as Lieutenant Governor, and also because of his appeal to this working class of Democratic voters. Eric, is there anything else you want to add here?
Nope. I think you hit the nail on the head. I was going to say the same thing about polling. Not sure that we can really trust them. One, because it's a Democratic internal, and two, because, they're really polling, and especially in Pennsylvania, we're not really sure how the polling is going to work. But I also do agree that I think at the moment, John Fetterman is, I think, more favored in Pennsylvania. One, because of those key labor union donations, and two, because I think overall, with his, populist type of personality, I think he is mobilizing the Democratic base more. Because interestingly, I was just reading an article that Conor Lamb is actually trying to campaign in more red Pennsylvania counties, which is really interesting, because I think most people think that mobilizing the Democratic base in Democratic areas is the pathway to the primary. So at this time, I personally believe at the moment that Fetterman will be able to win the primary because of his greater appeal and his more present appeal.
Yep, I agree. And with that being said, that marks the end of the video for today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this episode, please like one. If you like our content, please subscribe. And we'll see you in our next episode tomorrow.
See ya.
Thankfully, you won't have to hear me do a see ya ever again. Those were terrible.